you will find out that there's a lot of different definitions of what therapeutic recreation or recreational therapy is. And we sometimes put TR and RT because there's people who refer to it in kind of different ways in different parts of the country. So we just want to give you the general principle here of what we define it as, and you can kind of take which one makes the most, that you like the best as you get further into the profession. But recreation therapy is a process which uses recreation as a means. We want to emphasize that the other side of our major uses recreation as an end, meaning that you decide something, you go get it, and you're done. Recreation in our side of the major, and recreation therapy, is a means to an end. It's a tool to accomplish something else. That's a really big foundational difference in the two sides of our major. A means to improve or maintain physical, cognitive, social, emotional, and spiritual functioning in order to facilitate full participation in life. So you may have thought to yourself, I need to go outside because I just feel this need. Well, that's fine. That you're choosing recreation as an end in itself. The value of it was your own proposed value, and you enjoyed it, and it did what you thought it would do. But in our profession, we have somebody who's not really making those great decisions for themselves, and we know that they're somehow, somebody else is a little bit in charge of them at the moment. And so they are collaboratively coming up with a plan that uses recreation as a means to accomplish something in their lives. And it's easy to sit back maybe at where you are now and say, well, if I really needed some of that, I would just choose it for myself. But people in compromised situations don't always see really clearly. And I can tell you from my own experience, I got injured at age 14. And so my spinal cord injury seemed really devastating to me at age 14. And I thought, well, I can't do any of the things that I was really planning. And I really couldn't see my way forward. And one of the things that helped me see a way forward was recreation, and participation in it helped me change my mind. And that's sort of a really short illustration, but that's why I chose to get involved in first social work, and then found, because I hadn't met anyone yet in the profession of therapeutic recreation, and I morphed into that direction. I think that's really common with a lot of your stories here. You were thinking of one thing and you kind of, maybe you'll change just like I did, but let's move on. So why emphasize in RT, recreational therapy? Knowledge and application of the Americans with Disabilities Act. See, this one became very important to me because when I got hurt in 1974, there was no ADA. And so a lot of places were inaccessible. I went to the BYU campus in 1977 in the fall, and there was one accessible bathroom in the whole campus, and it was in the administration building where no classes were. So that didn't help me very much. I literally planned my schedule so I could go to school in the morning, go home at lunch and eat lunch, and go to the bathroom and go back to campus. What other choices were there, I thought in my head. So we will teach you about the Americans with Disabilities Act and how it has changed the world, the landscape of the world. Maybe you even have noticed how many curb ramps there are, and some of them have those sort of yellow dot squares that have the bumps on them. And we'll teach you all about that kind of stuff because it's pertinent to our clients who have physical disabilities, and the title's under there. So understanding how to accommodate recreation activities for individuals with special needs. So this doesn't just mean physical needs like mine. We would include people with developmental delay or some developmental issues that make it so that they need an accommodation in order to participate fully. So don't just think focusing on the physical accommodation, but others as well. Could be limitations on a lot of other areas. We focus on specialized training in psychology and biology. You have to take 2 courses in psychology, 2 courses in biology. We'll show you those in a second. But in order to treat people across the whole human spectrum, from little kids who have an individualized education plan, and therapeutic recreation can help deliver that, to seniors living in an assisted care or a nursing care center, a skilled nursing facility, we need to have you understand the psychology and the human development and the anatomy of people. So that's why we require 2 courses in psychology and 2 courses in
3 in psychology.
Oh, that's right. There's 111.
Yeah.
I was not remembering that. At BYU, there was a way to sneak around that, so you didn't. I came to teach here after teaching at BYU, so sometimes my brain goes back. So 3 courses in psychology. And so that gives you the understanding so that no matter which one of these subpopulations you're working with, you'll have a foundational approach to understanding what's going on in that person's psychological and physical world so that you can then help holistically get involved in that person's life. Hi, welcome. Can you tell us your name?
Carly.
Carly, what major are you here sort of tossing around? All right, you're already declared?
Yep.
And where are you from?
Star Valley.
All right, thank you. Have a seat. And then we know that you all know that there's a growing baby boomer market in the world. This one right here is from the that'd be the 2000 census. No, I think that's the 1991 when they did the ADA. There's 54 million people in America back then who qualified as having a disability when they were passing the law known as the ADA. And then 15% of recreation programs participants have a disability. What they found is roughly in any population, if you just randomly go to any group of people in the United States, somewhere between 10 and 15% of people will qualify as having a disability. So that's a segment of the society that isn't just based on age, although sometimes age occupies part of it. And the occupying part of it, as I just was saying, the baby boomer group will be getting bigger. So population percent-wise of people with disability will be growing. So on the physical side of the world, that's growing. All right, so where will you be working? Well, we have a lot of different places based on what I was saying earlier about little kids clear up to seniors. And so does anybody have a question about any one of those? We want to make this kind of interactive. Who would you be working with if you were in one of these populations, or what comes to your mind when you see that?
What you would be doing.
What you might be working?
I'm really interested in the correctional facility.
Oh, that's great.
And so I just kind of want to know a little bit more about what kind of stuff they do. I know a tiny little bit because my sister-in-law did that for a little while.
Okay, so we have different versions of corrections, right? We have some youth who are in trouble, but they're not already in trouble with the law. And so they go into residential treatment that's just trying to help straighten up their priorities and things. And we have some that are called adjudicated youth who are in trouble with the law and they had a court decide that they need to be in a form of incarceration, but there's various forms. Some of them are day only and some of them are more treatment oriented than others. And so we have those, and then we have actual real prisons, state prisons, and we have an intern right now in California.
She just passed her exam yesterday.
Oh, she
and
did? You heard
they want to
from
hire her. And
they want to keep her.
And it's starting pay 70, it's 75, something
Wow.
like that.
Because it's the state of California.
Mhm.
Idaho
And
wouldn't
it's
pay that rate. But she's working with what you might consider pretty dramatically needy
It's
people.
high security.
She's in the maximum group of people for sex offenders and other things these people are going to be long-term incarcerated, but they're also going to be in treatment for the thing that they were incarcerated for. So we do have some students who go into that. I've had some at BYU as well.
Okay.
And
Worked in correctional?
Dr. Zabriskie down at BYU did too. I don't have any experience there, but you ask the right person, you can really thrive in that environment if you're the right person cut out for that.
So I asked yesterday one of my classes, because we had someone from TR come speak to us, and she was saying that I can't remember what it's called. It's the correctional facility here.
The JCC
Yeah,
in St. Anthony.
So they said that they don't take volunteers anymore or anything like that. Is that right? Or
Pretty much.
pretty much, yeah. So is there anywhere around here that you can kind of get some experience with that, or?
Not that I know of. In Provo, we had a place, but it's too far. You have to.
Say Blackfoot, you'd have to go all the way to Blackfoot. St. Anthony, there's another correctional facility there that might do it. But I'm not sure as far as JCC. What happened is that the recreation leader that worked at the JCC passed away. And that was who would always take our interns. And so we have to kind of reestablish that connection.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's say welcome to our two new guests. Tell us your name and where you're from.
Paige Olson.
And where are you from, Paige?
Aurora, Colorado.
All right, and?
Jeremiah Weed from Texas.
All right, nice to meet you, Jeremiah. And Madison, are you going to be one of the seniors passing on information?
Oh, I know.
Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. All right, Madison's been in the program for a little bit. All right, so anybody else have an area of interest that got you here? How many of you see yourself working with adolescent-aged people? Yeah, it's usually about at least half the people. And there's a lot of options for what locations that might be. But one of the common ones is a residential treatment center. And there's a lot of places that have different philosophies or focuses on how they treat. For example, in Utah, they have a place called the Discovery Ranch. And they make you take care of animals and do farm chores as your way of learning, discipline, order, structure. and all those things, and it's a working ranch. So you have to go with a place and a population that sort of fits you. And I think that part of what we want to do while you're in our classes is help you say, well, where is that I fit? And we want to give you tastes and information that will help you figure that out.
The sister Greenwood brought up a job opportunity in South Carolina working at a school.
Yeah.
And so you'd get the summer off, you'd do the same holidays as the school as well.
All right,
So
yeah.
Another thing for adolescents.
Right, so that's another location where you can work with that population, but it's a different focus than a place like a residential treatment center where they live. Okay, so if nobody else has another question, we've got the group out on the desert there. How many are interested in wilderness type treatments and therapies? Oh, 3 or 4, all right. So there was a recruitment session yesterday for Anasazi right here on campus. Did any of you go to that? All right. All right, so there's a lot of diversity. That's what we're trying to point out here. Let's move ahead. All right, so the National Council, what this stands for up here is the National Council on Therapeutic Recreation Certification. No one in our field should be practicing without being a certified practitioner. So in order to become certified, you have to pass a test at the end of your college career. You go do an internship, and at some point, like a doctor, you have to pass an exam, or a lawyer, they have to pass an exam to say they're ready for practice. It's the same here. You have an internship and you have a practice exam that gives you a certification. Now, once you have become certified, they recognize at the National Council that you might have specialties in one area and you're really not interested in being everything, but you might want to zoom in on one specific thing. And you would then be able to take either time in a professional way in terms of your practice, or education, or both, and combine them to get what they call a specialty certification. So I have only practiced in one field, and that is physical medicine and rehabilitation. So I would want to get, like credit for being a specialist in that area, and I would want that sub-certification that shows that that's my specialty area of practice. So these are now available through the NCTRC, and it would be my opinion that you would set your sights the minute you start your employment on satisfying that credential as soon as you could get it, because I think it shows people that you have an area of practice and interest and a specialty level of certification. Any question on those? They kind of reflect the places we were just talking about where you might work.
So you would take another test on top of the original one to become.
I don't think it's a test so much as proof of a body of work.
Certain things you have to do.
Does that make sense? So many hours of this and so many educational units versus work hours of this and that kind of thing. So I don't think there's a formal test at the end.
Is it common for people to do more than one of those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer, so I'll go with Sister Greenwood. All right, let's move on ahead. All right, so what makes you more hireable? Well, you're all going to get a degree with an emphasis area, but your specialization, which we were just talking about a minute ago, is started while you're here in college. Like, you should be taking things that get you ready for that. So you can get specialization clusters. If you're going to work in a place like an eating disorders clinic, they use a lot of the expressive arts as to ways to getting to people to find who they are and identify with where they're going. And so you might want to load up on some classes that give you structure and elements that you can draw on from the expressive arts here on campus. If you're also going to work with adolescent youth, sometimes you've ever heard that they manipulate people, sort of get into game playing a little bit. So you might want to take a class just on adolescent psychology and not try to cover it all in one semester from cradle to grave. You might just want to zoom in on what's going on during the adolescent years, and you might use that as one of your cluster classes. I took a class on death and dying, the whole 14-week semester class, just on elderly issues about death and dying. Loved it. It was fantastic, because in rehabilitation, sometimes rehabilitation is centered around older people, as it's what we call subacute rehabilitation. It's generally focused on older geriatrics. So you can have an emphasis area in something that you think you might be doing. Just this month, our new campus president, President Clark Gilbert, said something like 80% of the internships from this campus are being done in Utah, Idaho, and the third state, I can't remember what it was. And he said, we want to reverse that. We want about 20% to go to Utah and Idaho, the Intermountain area. And we want the other group of you to go everywhere else. So if you want to work with wounded warriors, and there's one in Honolulu, Hawaii, we want you to go to Honolulu. And we want you to say, if you want to work with spinal cord injury, and there really isn't a great rehabilitation place for that in Idaho, we want to send you someplace like Craig or Shepherd, so Denver or Atlanta. We want you to spread out, and we want that to be a strength of our program, that you go to the best internships in the whole United States, not just the most convenient ones closest to Rexburg. Madison.
Also, a lot of times I hear the people who go out to their internships, they say that going away is better because they get better experience with a wider variety of people. There are a lot of LDS people concentrated in this area in Utah. And like, in order to give like the best level of care, they say it's a really, really good thing to go away.
Yeah, you get a different perspective, and you get a different ability to work with different types of people. For those of you who came in before, I said I went to Portland State. I graduated from BYU first and then went to Portland, and Portland State University is really quite liberal compared to BYU, and I chose it intentionally. I wanted to get a different way of seeing the world and a different perspective from different professors. You can choose that for yourself. It's really good. So we want you to go wherever the best place is, not what's the closest or easiest. So that gives you a strength when it's time for you to change your internship into a job. And just how many people in the last year have changed their internships into a job? I can think of at least 4 right off the top of my head.
We've got an amazing placement for our interns. We're standing at about a 95% placement for students who graduate. So they have jobs within, and that's within the first 6 months of being graduated.
And so that would include people who turned their internship into their job or got a job in a different place. But quite a few of our interns lately have been just turning their internship right into a job. They say, we want you to stay. And that's the example Sister Greenwood just gave about Hannah in California in the prison system. They want her to stay. So that's a strength in terms of getting your employment. If they love you so much they want to keep you, they're going to try to, make it worth your while. And boy, did they ever make it worth their while. My side note, when I got my master's degree completed in social work, which is a pretty closely related field, in 1988, I signed my first contract proudly for $22,500 a year. I was thrilled. So I know that's a lot of years ago, but just showing you how it's changed, oh boy, $70,000 is way different. And I will give you a slide in a second that shows that's kind of, don't be thinking everybody gets that. We'll show you a range. All right, let's keep going. All right, so talking about the slides, let's click on each of these links, and we wanted to, I hope they all still work. I didn't check all of them today, but we wanted to show you that we aren't just making up numbers. So here it is. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, pretty trustworthy source, right? And here it is. Yeah, make that bigger. So here's your median pay, $42,000 per year. So that's the middle point. There's lots of people making less and about equal number making more. That's the middle point. So that's a truthful fact. The job outlook is as fast as average. I've seen some that say better than average because of the acceleration of the baby boomer crowd. But if you're not interested in elderly care, that you shouldn't really weigh that as a factor. You should think of the growth in your area. So they're projecting 13%. And you can see here that they have a description, and that what we call a entry-level education, we call it a terminal degree. With social work, I knew that I had to get a master's degree or I couldn't work in rehab. With physical therapy, you must get a doctoral degree now to work in physical medicine, in PT. And occupational therapy, some places still have masters, and some places now have doctoral programs. But ours is the only one of those 4 that we just named, including nursing, that the terminal degree is a bachelor's degree. It's where you graduate and you're prepared to practice. So that's an advantage. Sometimes it's a slight disadvantage when you're talking to people who look down on you for only having a bachelor's degree, but you'll have to defend your term. It's an advantage in that you can be done and ready to practice with a bachelor's level entry degree.
Something that I've been trying to figure out, is it worth it to try and get a master's degree in like program management or social work or something along those lines? Or is it just better to stay at a bachelor's? Because I know with my sister-in-law, she's making the same amount of money in accounting with her bachelor's that some people in the same firm are with their master's. So
Can I cover that one?
Sure,
Okay,
I'd be delighted.
So some of the things, there's a couple things with this. One is like we have a student who just graduated, she's going to OT school, and I know some of you talked about OT school. She got into OT school right away because one of the nice things about TR is that it fulfills most of the prereqs for an occupational therapy program, okay? So you usually have to take like 1 or 2 additional classes and you've got all your prereqs done. Well, she's in an OT program now, but she's also certified as a rec therapist, which means that she can work as a recreation therapist making more money at a student, like as a student doing her master's degree, if that makes sense. So basically she's not making $12 an hour, she's making between 16 to 25, an hour, depending on where she's working. Does that make sense? So that's one of the advantages of having it be that terminal degree, is that if you decide to go on and get a master's degree in something, then you still have a degree that's going to pay you more than what some other degrees would pay you with a bachelor's, okay? The other thing is, I generally, unless you know that you're either going to go on to like PT or OT, something like that, I generally tell students work in the field for a few years, and then make a decision as to whether or not you want to go on and do a master's degree. You might find that you decide, you know what, I really love this. I'm going to go on and I'm going to get a master's in therapeutic recreation because I want to be an administrator in therapeutic recreation. On the other hand, you might be working in a hospital and think, you know what, I want to be one of those administrators who's making all those decisions. So you might go for a master's in healthcare administration. Does that make sense? We've got one student right now, our graduate, who he's actually going for his doctorate in marriage and family therapy because he loves the coupling of recreation therapy and the skills he learned with that, but he wants to counsel marriages and families, okay? So my advice on that is generally to wait a little bit. There was a study done at BYU in regards to masters, and at this point, there isn't a huge difference in pay if you go with a bachelor's or a master's early on. Does that make sense? It's the experience and then coupled with the master's that increases that pay rate.
So, for example, even though we don't have a lot of master's degree programs here on this campus, where I came from at BYU, that it had lots. And so we had students being recruited literally in our classrooms from the social work school to get a master in social work, because they think our students are very well prepared for that. We just heard that occupational therapy schools consider our students good, well-prepared students for their programs. We've also had students go into the MBA program, and also, which Sister Greenwood did, and also the MPA program, the Master of Public Administration, as well as she just mentioned healthcare financing. So we have our healthcare administration. We have a lot of people who get a fundamental degree and then practice or decide what they want to do next, and then they're able to use our degree as a part-time job, as Sister Greenwood said. Or if you decide you want to raise children for a little while and take a break from full-time pay or full-time hours, our jobs, there's a lot of them that have part-time access. You don't have to go full-time. So there's a lot of choices that are open to you if you complete a degree in our field, and there are hardly any that are foreclosed. Like even law school. I had one student at BYU go on to law school. I wouldn't say that's common. I'm just saying that it wouldn't be a penalty to you for almost anything that you would choose to do next if you finish here and do well. And then with a little experience, I think you'd be a really valuable commodity on almost any graduate program. So let's click on that next one, Sister Greenwood, and see what this one said, 42 as median.
Sorry.
Yeah. You have to go back to the full slide view. There you go. And this one, I'm recreationtherapist.com. I think they had something right on their homepage about.
I know.
What does it
What's
say?
interesting about the pay, just so you guys know, is it varies based upon where you are. Regionally, it's different. And the Intermountain states is actually the lowest paying area. So if you get a job in Idaho or Utah when you first graduate, you'll make less than the majority of recreation therapists out there. California, East Coast, South, Texas. One of my students was just telling me today that she was looking at jobs that were starting at 70 in Texas. Yeah.
Sean and I were looking at a CTRS with aquatic therapy certification, and its starting was $32 an hour to $50 an hour.
Yeah.
$50 an hour is $100,000 a year.
Yeah. So it depends on your region, and it depends on also your population. Okay.
Or even your employer. I can't remember where it is on their site, so
Okay,
I
want
would,
me to go to the other
yeah,
one?
just go to the third one. You can come back there at your leisure and explore that. Another thing I would mention is the type of employer that you work for also matters. For example, a nonprofit might not have as much freedom to pay you something as a United States federal government job, like with the Veterans Administration. They have policies that are pretty nationwide uniform, as opposed to a local nonprofit would just be able to pay you what they could. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. All right, this one, did we find a number on this one?
Scroll down on this one. Do you see it?
Here it is,
Okay.
salaries. Get rid of that.
Is that
This is
where-
from 2014.
It's just a questions like survey.
All right, so shows the average salary at 48. Now, average means add them all together and divide. That's not quite the same as median.
Where'd it go? Oh, there it is.
Right here. Breaking it down, 34% make this range, 26 to 40, 28% make 41 to 50, and 18% make the upper end. Only 5% are going to be in that high range there. And so you can see, we've had students go into all of those ranges.
Yeah.
Just depends on those factors we just mentioned.
And that's just with the bachelor's. Like
Yeah.
that could just be, you could be making that much with just.
Yeah, in some places you can actually make the same amount as an occupational therapist, and you're working at a bachelor's level.
It'll depend on a lot of factors, so we don't want to promise the sky here.
Yeah, we're not promising that, but
But we're giving you these facts right off of, recognized job sites. We're not telling you, oh, we think this. This is what's being reported. So we want to give it to you kind of straight. All right, so let's move on. All right, so now these details are all on the green sheet, but so we won't spend a lot of time on them. But you do have under the green sheet, the foundations part is the above part, and we don't want to give you guidance on those issues on the foundations part, but we do want to give you guidance on these content areas. So you need general recreation coursework and some of that in TR, and so we'll have you point out on these on the green sheet. 5 courses in TR. We already mentioned that you have to have 3 courses in psychology, and they're listed right there: abnormal psychology, human growth. What they call that is human development across the lifespan. And then the third one was abnormal psychology. So you have those 3. We have the 2 anatomy physiology courses. And then the remainder of the coursework must be filled in from human services. So there's a lot of things that can go in there. Remember how we mentioned the cluster, how you could get things in psychology or in expressive arts or things that complement your degree. And so those would be elective, your choice. And then at the end of all that, you've got to do a 14-week full-time fieldwork placement. That means you have to go at least 30 hours per week. You can't stretch it out at 20 hours per week. And you have to be supervised by someone who's currently a certified therapeutic recreation specialist.
and it has to be consecutive.
Yeah, you can't go
Cannot
6
take
weeks and
any
take a
time
big
off.
break.
Yeah.
So consecutive weeks, minimum 30 hours a week, as long as that would take to get your 560 hours. So after your coursework, your internship, and after your internship, your exam, and after that, convert that to your first paying job.
Am I right that we have 560 volunteer hours that we have to do before we do our
400.
internship?
400 exposure hours. Now, these hours don't have to be certified by or supervised by a certified person. They can be in any related field. So like, for example, if you were a certified nursing assistant, you could count the hours you worked in a nursing facility as exposure hours for those 400.
And if you volunteer in other places like BWI.
Exactly, those would count.
all those.
All would be for your 400 hours of exposure.
So with the 400 hours though, just a heads up, you cannot double count your classwork. So if you are taking a class and they say you have to have 20 hours of experience.
Yeah, like I'm in
You
a
can't double
accessible
count.
rec class and we need
The
15.
only one that you can do that with is 373. RM 373 allows you to do that. And that's the one, it's called Applied Therapeutic Recreation. And it's an online class, and that one you're allowed to actually count those hours toward the 400, and you can take it multiple times.
I was wondering if that's a mandatory class,
It's
because it's not, because you had sent out an email saying it was just open for the next semester.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure
if it was needed to be taken, if we have
It
those
does
hours?
fulfill the first aid requirement. So if you decided you didn't want to take first aid, you can actually take that and it fulfills that.
Okay, so any questions on the course content? We have 5 TR classes, 2 biology classes and 3 psychology classes. That's the core of what makes you different from a regular recreation major. Those are how you differentiate into the therapeutic recreation side of things. You have courses in common like 487, 320, 307, 304. All of those courses are overlapping, but these courses are the ones that make you different.
Well, just a plug, whatever, for 373. It's a great class. It's hands-on implementing
That's all you do.
what you're about to learn, what you can learn. It's great.
The other thing that I would say about 373 is, so it fulfills that advanced first aid course. And really, advanced first aid you can take on campus, and you're going to take it for 14 weeks. You can sign up for an advanced first aid class and do it in 3 days for less money than what it costs you to pay here. It would be worth your while to consider doing 373, so you're actually getting hands-on experience with a rec therapist and with clientele, and then fulfill the advanced first aid, and then get a certification for first aid elsewhere.
Okay, if there's no questions, we'll move on. Okay, so just to make it more clear what we were saying on the last slide, this gives you the actual course numbers, 264, 265, and then the 2 psychology classes that follow up the psych general class, the specialty ones. And then these areas of specialization, I mentioned fine arts. I didn't mention music already, but your exercise physiology courses can complement what you're already going to do in our major. And we talked about the pre-internship hours, and we talked about 373, and then your 14-week internship and your exam.
And with
So-
those pre-internship hours, it's anything after high school graduation that is within our field, that's what counts. So it starts after high school graduation, and missions do not count.
And that you can document.
Yeah, you gotta be able to.
Instead of just saying, oh, I did this and it was around 100 hours. Well, that's not going to quite be good enough.
What kind of required documentation?
Just a minute, I'll go here, then there.
So could it be just anything for volunteers?
It has to be something that connects to the human services that, the connecting with a person that would be a population or something that would be a strength for you as a therapeutic recreation specialist.
With like a autism program?
Yeah.
An autism program would be great. Yeah, now yours.
How are we required to document those hours?
Usually, what people do is they'll write up a summary and have their person that supervises them sign it. Or some people just photocopy their pay stub at the end of the year that says hours accumulated being paid as a CNA or something, and it'll say year-to-date hours. So that would work too, because that's a pay stub for you.
And it gets submitted on iLearn
Yeah, you
under the
load the
recreation
file.
therapy or under the recreation management course. And there's a place that you actually submit that, and then it's either Sister Archibald or I that grade it. Erica?
Oh, I was just gonna say, for my pre-internship hours, I was a lifeguard and a swim instructor, and where my boss wrote a letter, and that's what I submitted, and it was approved. So just an idea.
Would like anything fitness related count at all? Cause like I'm an aerobics fitness instructor.
So not anything, but if on a case-by-case basis, it's possible. It would depend on some
So,
things.
yeah, so like what kind of things would it?
So populations, really, if it was just plain at a health club, aerobics probably wouldn't count. But if you were doing something with a specialties population, maybe then yes. So we'd have to do that on a kind of a case-by-case look on that. Okay, Kate.
Just to answer your question maybe a little bit more, Brother Barney runs usually, I don't know if you're doing it, are you still doing it, the PE lab on Mondays and Wednesdays? So it's not quite with your aerobics instructor, which I'm sure you probably want to continue that because you already have a certification. But he does run a PE class for developmentally disabled on Mondays and Wednesdays. So at least that way you get an hour, 2 hours per week where you'd be doing something that's more active. And then maybe from there you could see if you could ask the developmental workshop area, or I work for Journeys, you could ask Journeys and whatnot and see if you couldn't provide maybe a class.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to get them without too much effort, but some people get them when they're off track, for example. Okay, well, I think,
Are you
Yeah,
good?
no, I'm good. I was just gonna say that if you ever have questions, just ask Teacher Greenwood or Brother Barney or Sister Archibald, they'll tell you if it works.
Right. No surprises. I think this is our last slide. And this is the paper copy we have over there on the table. It shows you when they're offered online versus on campus. So we're right here, winter next semester. You can see we've increased our ability to take all of the classes, but they're not all face-to-face every semester, just as Sister Greenwood already mentioned. So plan well. Don't get caught in a jam by saying the one course I need is not available now, because you've got multiple semesters to plan out. Make it so you take it when it is available. So, for example, some of them are available all the time, every semester. And even if it's not all of the TR classes, all of the psych ones are. So you can always find something you need if you plan it out. You don't have to have any blank spots or any delays. But if you fail to plan, you might get in a jam. So.
I see, like, it's in chunks, like 471, 472, 473. Those are a good idea to take all at the same time, or should you take them?
No.
Look right here. They may be taken concurrently, but nobody suggests that you do all three of those together. No.
And was there two that you taught that semester that was just first block? Do you remember?
Oh, that's for.
That was a lot.
That was,
Yeah.
it's a lot
You
even in a
don't
whole
think-
semester.
It was okay, but it was a lot.
So you should make your plan and then come and look at it with Sister Greenwood or I, just so that we all have a chance to have some input on issues like that. Rather than just put it on paper and say, I'm good. It would be smart if you go check it out with us as your advisors.
And just like from personal experience, I'm sure others in the room can say it too. Miss Greenwood had said something to me earlier, and I'm usually the person who like tries to get things done really fast. And instead, things worked out differently, and so I took it slower, like she said, and I taken 370 by itself first with Brother Barney. So then I had that background before I took 371, before I took 471. So much easier. You understand what's going on, and you can run through it. Whereas if you don't, then you don't have the prior information. So it's like trying to learn a class that you're actually taking in order to be already ready for the next class that you're taking currently already. Does that make sense?
Good testimonial. Don't take surgery and anatomy at the same time. Take anatomy first,
And
then
then
learn
surgery.
surgery. Okay, I think that's the last slide.
Really quick, what time is it?
It is 45.
5:45, okay.
Okay, so now, we're expecting pizzas to be delivered. We're not gonna backtrack on that promise, but until Hannah walks through that door, we can answer your questions about now, more specific, like individual like places or types of persons or information that's more personal to you than this generic kind of feeling. So what can we help you understand while we're waiting for that knock on the door? And Nick, you might want to make sure he knows we're in this room, because I told him we were in that room.
Oh.
I'm just saying, we wouldn't want to have Tanner tell us a sob story later. 'Cause then we don't sobbing too. All right, what can we answer for you? Or
There are no questions, and if you think of some, I'm gonna just show something to you really quick. I show it to my other students, so
Okay.
sorry if you've already seen this, but I call this the triangle of doom. No, I'm just kidding. I call this the triangle, the career triangle, okay? And so I always tell my students, at an internship, there's 3 things you're gonna focus on, okay? You're gonna focus on, I'm the one who oversees the interns, by the way. You're gonna focus on learning TR, right? So that's one thing you're gonna focus on. The other thing you're gonna focus on is you're gonna focus on learning population. And then the other thing that you're gonna focus on is learning how to be a full-time employee, which means you're learning about office politics, you're learning about, you know, a schedule, etc. Does that make sense? So one of the reasons that we ask you guys to do those 400 pre-internship hours, let me ask you this. If you're gonna go to an internship and you have not done any of these things, how do you think that internship is gonna be for you?
Super hard.
Yeah, you're gonna be focusing on not only learning about population and recreation therapy, but you're also gonna be learning how to actually be an employee, which there is a little bit of an adjustment to that, okay? But if before you go and do your internship, you've taken the time to go and get experience with different populations, now you've taken this little
aspect of the triangle out of that equation, if that makes sense. Because once you start to work with different populations, learning other populations gets easier and easier, if that makes sense, because you just learn how to do that. So if in your 400 hours, you take the time and you go volunteer with people who have autism, or maybe you're doing it at the homestead where you're working with people who are geriatric population, that's great, okay? Now, let's say you're off track, or let's say while you go to school, you decide I'm gonna work 20 hours a week. Now you've gotten the experience of full-time employment, because not only are you going to school full-time, but you're also doing 20 hours a week work. Or in your off track, you're working 40 hours a week somewhere. Does that make sense? So now, once you go to that internship, what's the one thing that you have to focus on? TR. You've taken the time to figure this out. You've taken the time to figure out this. Now, there's still going to be learning curves with this, but not nearly as many as if you didn't have experience prior. Okay? So I tell students, go out and get experience, the 400 hours, but work. Work, work, work. Get as much experience as you can, so that way when you go and do this internship, you're ready to just focus on the TR side of it, and you're not getting thrown the curveballs on this. Madison?
So one thing I realized doing my 400 hours, the populations that I thought that I wanted to work with, I don't want to work with.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting for me, because I went and I worked with geriatrics, and I worked with little kids at the YMCA, and I worked, where did we go in your class?
The development workshop or the homestead?
Development workshop. And we had all these different experiences, and I thought I wanted to do something, but I don't want to do that anymore. So it's really important to me to have that population.
Yeah, this is a big deal. It's easier to find out. It's easier to find out before you graduate and accept a full-time job.
I'm planning on getting an internship there, and then you're stuck.
Yeah, well, and imagine now you've decided to accept a full-time job working with at-risk youth, and then realize this is not my calling. Now you've got to go and find a different job, or you've got to tough it out. And so it's better to figure that out in advance. Kate?
I wanted to ask you a question then, because I took what you said and I went ahead and did it. And so I've been working for Journey since July. And I still love my job because I love people to an extent, but at the same time, maybe it's just like how it's put together, or it's more focused on a different type of therapy rather than TR. Maybe that's why I don't like it as much.
So you're learning this side of the triangle.
Yeah, and
right
so
there.
what's happening is I am seeing the full time, and I've also seen the population in like using. They allow me to use some TR when I go and do facility or community therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of harder to like plan that out when I'm already planning all this stuff while I'm doing it in school and whatnot. And I'm just kind of wondering, is it better on a resume for me to keep working with them? Because I was going to keep working with them straight through and then have 8 months of work. Or is it smarter for me to stop working with them by the end of December, because then I will have worked with them for about almost 6 months or so, and then go somewhere else and try a different population just so I can get another experience?
There's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
You have to do what you think would be the best preparation for that job. And if you really are getting the idea that even though you like the population, you don't like the treatment style, well, then maybe you would stick with the population but find a different place with a different philosophy. Or maybe you're saying, I would like to work with people like that in a not professional setting, but just enjoy it as part of my life. And maybe that's the conclusion you'll come to. But I can't help you make, looking on your resume isn't as important as looking at where you want to land.
Well, and quite frankly, you're a student, and so it is very common on, I do consulting for resume writing. So one of the things that when you're a student, it's pretty common to see 4 months, 5 months, 6 months in employment, just because that's kind of where your life is. It's a huge red flag after graduation, because it tells people you don't stay employed. But as a student, it's kind of an accepted thing. And so I think Brother Barney's right on. We can't really tell you what the best thing is, but if you leave, it's not going to be a detriment. But if you stay, it's not going to be a detriment either. Either way, you'll be in a good spot. Either way.
Okay, then I guess, sorry, follow-up question, is it okay if I ask? So you've known, I don't know if you mentioned this, but I wanted to work more with like mental health and so on, but because I'm getting married, I'm going to stay here in Rexburg, and this is also where I'm finishing my last semester. there's not really a lot of mental health options here in Rexburg that I know of. Do you know of some that I can even do?
Psychosocial rehab, that's what you would need to look at. Because that usually works with people who have, it's more the mental side. There's development, and then there's the psychosocial rehab.
And we did have a student commute all the way from here to Blackfoot, which is the state mental hospital.
Yeah, Blackfoot and Idaho Falls.
It's a ways to go, but she did it for the whole length of time she was doing her internship, and now she's continued on as an employee.
Is she the one that we met when we went there? That was like a really good placement for her.
There were two, I think, when you went there. Kiana is still there.
She looked like she was really good.
I wanted to also show you, since we don't have time to show you cool recreation therapy videos, like what it looks like in real life, I wanted to show you that we have a Facebook page. So could you pull that up? And when somebody finds a good TR article or video, they'll post it to that. And if you click on there once in a while, you could see some cool things that other students like you have found interesting, found helpful. And on that I am a recreation therapist.com website, at the bottom, there's a thing with the videos or something, and there's like 25 videos that all are made by undergraduate students telling what they do and how much they love their job and how much diversity they find. So we can't show you all those tonight, but we can show you and point you in the right direction.
So the thing that I found and that I found with other people who took the exam, there's not just one material that is going to let you pass, is going to help you pass. Like, if I relied on this, I would not have passed. So really, like, you have to study from a wide variety of things. So keep your books. Something that like I highly recommend is there's a practice exam that you can take on the NCTRC website, and it looks exactly like the actual exam does. And I seriously, like, please do this. It costs money. I think it's like $30 or something like that. But it is so worth it because it kind of makes you feel comfortable with how the exam is outlined. Yeah.
Is it, you pay once, so you keep taking over and over again, or do you have to?
Yeah, you pay once, and then sadly it doesn't like generate different questions. It's just one test. So I don't know if you can pay again.
You have access to it for like 4 days.
Yeah, so you have to like really utilize it because yeah, you only have a certain window. But so you take it and it gives you references on each question of where it was found in like a book or some kind of reference. And this is what another friend that had passed the exam previously, this is like the one thing that she recommended to me to do. So go and take the exam and then go back through and look at the references and go to your books and read why why those questions were given and what the meaning is behind it, because that seriously like saved me. There were so many questions that related to that test that helped me a ton. So yeah, I think I outlined something else. So I met with another girl that went to school here, and we kind of studied together a little bit. Sister Greenwood has flashcards. I think you do, yeah. And to be honest, I felt like some of them were applicable, but I didn't really feel like they were super helpful. So once again, just use lots of material and try and just study as much as you can. And so I started studying probably like 2 months in advance. And my first month I was a little bit like light. I wasn't like super deep into studying, but the month before the exam, I was studying super hard. So make sure that you give yourself plenty of time because otherwise it can be really overwhelming. And for me, I took most of my TR classes like a little bit earlier on in my college courses. So like I was kind of freaked out because I was like, I took these classes a while ago and I'm not going to remember anything. So unless you're like super on top of it, I would definitely suggest like studying as soon as you possibly can. So studying with others is obviously very encouraged. It's a good way to bounce ideas off of each other. I used my outlines from class a little bit. I didn't use them a ton just because like I don't know, I guess I didn't really trust my outlines. I was a little worried that I don't know, put the wrong information. Let's see. So I asked a couple of my friends what they suggested, if there is any advice that I could give you guys. And one of them just said pray. And this, no, seriously, like, I would not have passed my exam if I didn't have help from Heavenly Father. Like, my husband and I prayed so hard, and we fasted, and even during the exam, there were parts, like how I was saying, where there was a question that kept being repeated, and I just was like, I can't get this. Heavenly Father, I need your help me. And I honestly think that that's the reason that I passed, was because Heavenly Father helped me so much. But going into the exam, I was really nervous because I had a friend that had taken it and she failed it twice. So I was super nervous and I was discouraged, and I was like, great, I did all my assignments with her, and if she can't pass, then I can't pass. But I don't necessarily think I'm the smartest person ever, and that's not to degrade myself, but I honestly don't. So if I can pass, you guys can pass. You just gotta have confidence in yourself that you can do it, and pray lots and study hard. So yeah, that's pretty much my advice. Do you guys have questions?
Okay. I wanted to know how much of that and quiz and so on is on the exam.
That's a good question. So on my exam, I honestly felt like there was like none. I know obviously it's different for everyone. Everyone gets a different exam because there's, I don't know, like thousands of questions that they have and they generate your exam. So for me, like, I didn't feel like there was hardly any anatomy. There were maybe a few things that were applicable, but I really would not stress much on the anatomy. Like, even in this book, it's not to say that you should go by everything that's in here, but it really didn't cover much of that. So
the thing to remember is, and I think Candace was great in bringing this up, on NCTR's website, you can find the test, like how it's laid out. Mm-hmm. And so it will tell you how much is on there, like as far as what percentage is on there.
Yeah, I think that, I think I saw something about that. I don't know, but I honestly, I just didn't see a lot of anatomy for me. And as well as my friends that have taken it in past, they did not see a lot of anatomy either. But that's not to say, because maybe you could go in and get something different. I don't know. Yeah.
How long do you feel like it takes to like sit there and really think everything through? Like, I know it's different for everyone.
For the exam, or?
Yeah.
So I forgot to mention it's timed, which is really super stressful. I don't do well with timed exams. So it takes, I think they don't give you much time really to take it. I think they give you, let's see, for the testlets, I think there's like 15 or 14 questions in them, and I think they give us like 12 minutes, maybe a little bit more. So I could be saying that wrong, but it's like really only like a minute per question.
Is it short answer?
No.
It's multiple choice. Yeah, so all of it? Yes, all of it is multiple choice.
I was expecting like short answer.
Yeah.
Like how they give me careless.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, do you guys have any other questions about the exam? Because we need to move on here soon. Go ahead.
So how long is the test total? Like, how many questions?
So there's 60 questions in the base test.
Okay.
If you pass that, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't pass that, then you go on to testlet, and each testlet contains like 15 questions.
Okay.
So I would highly recommend before you go on and take the exam, take practice exams so that, and time yourself so that you can get used to the timing, because it can be really stressful looking at the clock.
I was just going to say, so you said as the first portion of the test, and then you have the testlets. Do you only move on to those testlets if you don't pass?
Exactly, yeah. So I had to end up taking the base test and four testlets.
Okay.
So you go until you pass.
And don't stress too bad about that, because it's fairly common to have to go on into the testlets. So,
yeah.
you know, if you have that moment where you're like, oh no, you know, I'm going on, well, so is probably 80% of the rest of the students who are taking it, okay?
That's stressful, but it's okay.
Is it all part of the same test experience? Like you go one time and then take a test and then the test looks after that? Okay.
As I understood it also, Candace, is it looked for, in your 60 question set, it looked for the weakest area, and then it gave you a test with on the weakest
I
area.
think so, yeah, because like I said, I was having trouble with spinal cord injuries, and it kept asking me about that. So I think it really is testing you to see if you're qualified.
You might have just got some questions you didn't know, and so it's going to clarify, do you really know this? Did we just give you some bad questions?
Yeah.
So it's
that's
exploring
exactly
where your
it.
weak spot is.
Remember that validity and reliability?
Ooh,
Yeah.
those are kind of.
So with the anatomy stuff, was it like conceptual or was it like?
Yes. A lot of the test was conceptual, so you needed to know, a lot of it was scenarios, so you need to know how to apply concepts to scenarios. So like, for example, it would have a scenario about a certain client in a nursing home and what's the best treatment for them, or what would be the best game for someone to play who has a hand injury or something like that. And they'd give you a scenario and you have to identify what would be best for them. So, yeah.
All right.
You guys can do it.
Let's give her a hand. Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna go toward the finding an internship, and then we'll move a little bit more into the exam. I think that it's been covered pretty well though, so we'll see where we go with that. So a couple of things. You've asked me about how to find an internship. There's lots of different ways to find an internship. I'm a big fan of networking. I think networking is a way to really find some good solid internships. You have Brother Barney and I. If you joined any associations, then you have a whole network right there. Okay. There is the ATRA Association. So, and then there's also here locally. There's the Therapeutic Recreation Association of Idaho. I don't think actually exists anymore. Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure what they're doing with that. They talked about combining with Montana, so I'm not sure if that happened or not. But just contact me about that if you're trying to find something local. The Therapeutic Recreation Society page on Facebook, we often post jobs there, and we'll post information there for internships. The other place that you can go is onto Brain Honey. If you go into the Recreation Management major course, and if you go into Therapeutic Recreation internships, we have them, anything that comes to me by mail or email, anything like that, we post in here. And so they're separated by location, they're separated by population, and then they're separated by settings. And so if you're interested in something, that's a good way to start. I am a big fan of getting on the phone and calling and finding out. I need to be really clear on this, is that we're not going to find your internship for you. Part of the process of finding an internship is learning how to look for a job. Because who's going to find your job for you when you graduate? You are, right? And so if you are interested in a certain area and you're not finding the internships that you're wanting to, ask questions, network, but look, start picking up the phone and calling. And that's what I can tell you. The other thing that you can do is there are some really awesome, and I haven't taken the time to do this and I apologize, but like East Carolina University, they have, or at least had, a listing on their website of all the different internship sites that they had like done all this research to find. And so it was in an Excel sheet. So some universities actually post it on their website and you can find that. We don't have that posted as far as a spreadsheet that shows all that. Where we've chosen to do it is on Brain Honey. Questions about that? Oh, so internship expeditions, you can also, Kate, this goes down to what you're interested in. But it says Sister Greenwood took, but I actually didn't because I was 9 months pregnant and I couldn't go. Brother Barney took a group of students to Denver.
I got sick when I came back.
Oh, that's right. It was Brother Kimple.
Kosovo.
Yeah.
So Brother Kimple.
Brother Kimple took a group of students who wanted to go down to Denver, Colorado to do some internship hunting. And the internship office here, the advisory center, they actually have money set aside for you guys to actually go and look for internships. So let's say that all of you decided to go to Hawaii. I'm not pregnant. If all of you decided that you wanted to go to Hawaii and you said, we really want to find internships in Hawaii, I would have to say, okay, let's go to the internship office. No, I'm just kidding. But they do actually have money set aside for you to be able to travel. So I've taken a group to DC. We've taken a group to Denver. But they will pay for, it usually ends up being about $300 to $400 out of pocket for you to go to an internship area for 3 to 4 days is what you're looking at. So it's pretty amazing that the school has that kind of funding. But here's the caveat, is there has to be more than one of you that wants to go. There has to be several. It's usually, they say like 3 or more, and that will constitute a trip, and then we can put together a group to go. And it doesn't have to just be recreation therapy students. Like, let's say you talk to some rec management students and they're interested in internships in Kansas, and you want to see Kansas ones, and you've got a few friends that want to do that too, who are maybe in business. You can actually have a whole conglomerate of different students to go. Madison?
I had a question, but it doesn't really apply, so I'm not going to.
Okay.
So like if my wife was looking for an internship in the same area, then she could come as well?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So as long as the internship office says, yep, this is fine, they will help fund it. It's amazing. It's amazing what the school has for you.
Is it per semester?
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be that they would coordinate a trip every semester, but then they realized that it was kind of repetitious. So then what they did was they handed it over to individual departments and said, if your students want to do this, come to us and we'll put it together. Okay, so moving on. Okay, some of you have asked about what to ask, how do I find a good one? And there are, first of all, some questions that you need to ask yourself. And these questions are things that, there's a packet over there, and it has, what I did was I sent an email out to a bunch of students and said, if you had it to do over again, what would you do differently with the internship? What questions do you wish you would have asked? Those kind of things, okay? What kind of questions did they ask you in the interview? That kind of stuff. And so I put it all together into that packet. If we run out, just shoot me an email and I can send it to you electronically. There's also some that are printed off in the other hallway. So you need to ask yourself these questions, because you need to figure out what kind of work environment you want, where you want to work at, what population you want to work at, and whether or not you want a clinical setting, whether or not you want a community setting, whether or not you're going more traditional, non-traditional. Those are things that you need to ask. Why is this important? Go ahead.
Depends on how happy you want to be at your job.
It's a big deal. This is a big deal. An internship is a life. It's a decision that creates a direction in your life. And not to say that you're stuck in that position, but it's definitely something that's going to shape your career, okay? And so you want to make a wise decision on this. You know, what kind of supervisor do you want? I had one intern, she came to me and said, never let anybody else go there. She worked correctional in California. And I said, well, why? What was wrong? And she said, well, my supervisor, all we did the whole time I was there was play basketball. He had set up basketball tournaments for his clients, and that's what they did. They just did basketball every day. Recreation therapy, there's a lot more to it than just basketball, okay? And so she felt like she had wasted her internship because she hadn't learned some of the essential skills that she felt like she needed to have, okay? And so just be thinking about what you're looking for. Yeah.
How do you find that out? How do you find out what kind of supervisor?
This is a really good question. Because, you know, I'm sure that she went thinking, oh, this is going to be really good. So a couple things that you want to look at is, first of all, your internship site has to be approved, and you have to have completed all of your coursework before you apply for that internship. Just a heads up, this is really important, okay? NCTRC will not let you sit for the exam if you do not have your coursework finished, nor will they recognize your internship if you do not have your coursework finished, okay? Yeah.
My friend Blaine went to do an internship in Alaska, He said that he was not finished with all of his coursework. He said he finished all of his like recreation stuff, but he wouldn't finish like anatomy and things like that. Is that kosher?
No. When he submits his paperwork to NCTRC, they'll reject it. So with rec management, they can go and do that. With therapeutic recreation, it'll get rejected.
I think he's a community.
Yeah, he can do it
Yeah,
because he's
that's fine.
community, but therapeutic recreation cannot do that. It is against NCTRC guidelines.
Okay.
So you have to finish all the courses before you even apply.
You can apply for the internship, but you can't register for the internship. So you could be applying for internships right now, but when you actually do your internship, you have to have your coursework done. Yes.
Oh, it just left me. Maybe it'll come back.
It's okay. It's okay. Okay. So the other thing that you really need to do is check just a minute, Kate. The other thing that you really need to do is two things. One is you have to make sure that rec therapist has been certified for a minimum of a year. I've told some of my other students, when I first came here, there was a student, I didn't oversee the interns, and there was a student who went, she did her internship. She came back and was like, Sister Greenwood, it didn't count. The whole internship did not count. She had not checked the NCTRC website to see whether or not her advisor was certified, and she wasn't. So she did a whole internship under somebody who did not have certification. So when she submitted the paperwork to NCTRC, they wouldn't accept it. She had to work in the field for 2 more years before they recognized that she could certify. So that's a big deal. And NCTRC has a place that you can actually verify whether or not they've been certified and how long they've been certified for. And that's your responsibility. So when you find that person that you're really interested in interning under, go to NCTRC's website and make sure that this will count. Okay? Just one second. The other thing that I would tell you is visit the site. If at all possible, go see it. You can learn a lot about a site by going and feeling and smelling and watching and observing, okay? There's a lot of things that you can pick up on. Now, not all of you will be lucky enough to do that, especially if you go out of state or leave this region, which is great. Leave the region, it's wonderful. But that means that you need to ask some really, really clarifying questions so that way you can ascertain whether or not this is a place that you want to be at. Okay, Kate, you had a question?
I've heard of other girls and then come back.
Stephanie, you had a question?
So with the seeing if it qualifies, if your CTRS that you're under has been qualified for over a year, like how do you know that? Is that really all you need to check? Because I've gone through this with my internship and asking her questions, but I still feel unsure that I asked the right questions.
So this is what I would tell you. I would say make sure that when you're making your decision on your internship that you're using prayer. Definitely go by the Spirit. I'm a big believer in that. I think Heavenly Father will really help you in that direction. But here are some things that I think that you really need to be asking questions on, and you also have that handout. So when you ask questions to who is going to be your advisor, you want to ascertain, are they using the TR process? Are they just an activities director? Is that what they see themselves as? Do they create treatment plans, and what's their relationship with the treatment team? Are they a part of the treatment team if they're doing clinical? If they're not a part of the treatment team, why are they not a part of the treatment team? Does the hospital not recognize them as allied health professionals? Or is it just because they have decided individually that they don't want to be on the treatment team? Okay, and so these are questions that you need to really ask to find out how they see themselves in their practice of recreational therapy. Kate, you waited very patiently.
Yes, no worries, thank you. So I remembered, so if you have to graduate first, basically, until you can go on this internship and so on, if that is like a 3rd semester in a row, how easy is it just to get registered still? Does that make sense? Because
yeah. So if you've been off track, so the rule of the school is that if you've been off track, or if you haven't gone to school for 3 semesters, you have to reapply.
No, I mean, okay, so I have fall, winter, and I'm going to graduate in winter, but I want to do my internship right as soon as the spring starts. So like I'm applying for internships like now,
Okay.
and go about it, so then I can start right on it as soon as that time comes. I'm not on track, I'm graduated by
fine.
that time, like,
You're
I
fine.
can pick up the internship just as easy, like they'll
Yeah,
say-
you can do your internship on your off track.
Okay.
It's perfectly acceptable.
Okay.
So, yeah.
If, for example, you guys finish up this semester,
Mhm.
but all the internship starts during the summer,
Mhm.
Pell Grant wise, do they have a system where you can do acceptance of Pell Grants during that?
I'm not absolutely positive, because generally you're not doing a full credit load, but what they do is they don't charge the full tuition fee for your internship. There's a fee that's attached to it, and I don't remember the exact price, but I think it's in the realm of like $150, something like that. It's not super, it's not too bad as far as expense goes.
Okay.
So, yes.
What if you would like maybe be moving, like, and you're doing your internship? Like, would that be a problem at all? Like, because my husband's pre-med, and so he's gonna be like going into medical school and definitely might be moving, but like, I'll be done with like my actual classes. Would I be able to do my internship just like?
The NCTRC guidelines are that it has to be at the same facility. And so you're better off waiting and then doing your internship than trying to interrupt it. Because it has to be at the same place and it has to be consecutive.
So it doesn't really matter how long it is after like you've taken your classes. So like I can be done technically at BYU-Idaho and then like
You won't
happens.
have your diploma
Yeah.
because you can't graduate until you've actually done that internship.
Mhm.
Here's the other thing, is that NCTRC is who creates the guidelines on how you can credential, okay? So let's say that you were like, oh, I know I can do that internship, and 3 years goes by, okay? And then suddenly you're like, kids are starting to get bigger, I think it's time that I start doing this, I'm gonna certify. Well, if you go to do your internship, great, but let's say that in that 3-year process, NCTRC has said, you know what, we think that our students should add another rec therapy class, which means that because you didn't take 6 classes, you only took the 5 that were required, you have to come back to school and do that class.
Oh, because requirements.
Because the requirements might have changed. So I always tell students, get your internship done as soon as possible. And the other part too is that there is a correlation between how quickly you take the exam after graduation or right at graduation and passing rate. And so you have a higher chance of passing if you take it sooner rather than later.
Is it possible to take the exam while you're finishing your course?
Yes. Well, no. You have to have all your coursework done with the exception of the internship.
Okay, so I can take it in March because you don't graduate until April.
No.
There's a fee, Natasha took hers early, she said there's a $25 fee.
Yeah.
Since you want to take it before your internship.
Yeah. You can take it before your internship or during your internship, but you cannot take it until you finish the classes.
Do you think it's smarter to take it during or after?
NCTRC shows that there's a higher percentage of passing for those who take it before, like before their internship or during their internship than those who take it after, but it's a very minimal, it's very minimal as far as the research shows.
Okay, because I only have one in March and then in May, and you graduate in April, and then if you go right into the internship, then like you're guaranteed to have to do either during or after.
Okay, so my big thing is ask lots of questions. When you do that internship interview, just ask a lot of questions. And I think the students gave some great questions in that pamphlet that you guys picked up. There's just some really good information in there. Okay. Moving on. Okay, so you have to sit for the exam in order to actually pass the internship. You have to register for the exam and be accepted to take it. Okay, it is expensive. It runs between $400 to $425, just depending on if you decide to take it early or if they have to mess with paperwork. So it ranges between that. Yeah.
And that's per exam?
Per exam. So you just want to take it once. So yeah.
So we can't take it like before we start our internship?
You can. Yeah, you can take it before you start your internship. So Yes.
Is it possible for your internship to start in the middle of what's considered a semester?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
The other thing, and thank you for bringing that up, those of you who are gonna start looking for an internship, I tell students start looking a year out, and then I tell them start really talking to people about 8 months out, and then start applying about 6 months out. Some places they'll be like, oh, we're not accepting applications, but now like National Institute of Health, NIH in DC, it's basically an 8-month. You know, if you don't have your stuff in 8 months out, you're not gonna go. And so start investigating sooner rather than later so you don't miss those cutoffs, okay? The other thing that I tell students, oftentimes they'll ask you for a syllabus or an example of a syllabus so that they know what your requirements are. You can find that on the Recreation Management major website. And if you go into this therapeutic recreation internship, there it is right there, there's the syllabus. So if you click there, you can download it and you can email it to them and they've got it. Okay, that's just a sample though, just a heads up, because I don't update it every single semester. Questions? What time is it? 35. 35, good. So before we move on from there, I asked Jackie, she's one of our graduates, to come in and talk to you guys about internships. And so she's going to take about 10 minutes and just kind of share with you her experience and, you know, what she wishes she knew, that kind of stuff.
Is it all right if I pull up a little pathetic PowerPoint?
Sure.
Sure. Do you want me to get to that?
Sure. Brother Barney, you want to talk with them at all while we get this impromptu?
I actually had a question for the future.
Okay.
So my wife and I actually wanted to move to Florida, and we're looking for internships there. Does anyone want to do an internship trip to Florida next semester?
I do.
Let's do it.
No, but seriously, Nick, if you have that idea, what I did last time was once a couple people came to me about Denver, I sent an information email out to students and said, it looks like it would be scheduled in this winter. You know, those who are interested in going to Florida for an internship expedition, thank you. Expedition, then, you know, email me. And so I gathered all the names and we were able to put a trip together. So once you have a couple people interested, it's not that hard because we can send the email out to everybody and then get a good list.
But if you wait too late, you'll never get that set up.
Yeah, yeah, especially if you're looking at winter, you need to start that now. So.
Yeah, so starting it right now.
But Florida's big, you can't just say all of Florida.
No,
Never make it.
Jacksonville or
Yeah, do that. Yeah.
I said Dallas.
Okay, there we go. We got three.
What's that?
Brother Barney, if you want to go to Florida, I'll have her.
That's what I have.
Hawaii, everybody?
Yeah, my mission was in Florida.
Oh, it was?
Hawaii.
I think
I'm not living there.
I know, my friends who are living there right now, and they're like, it's fun, but not living.
But not living.
I lived there for a year.
Awesome. All right, can I just say I love being in this crowd. It's been honestly way too long. So to start off my little presentation, thank you, Sister Greenwood, for doing stuff. I asked Sister Greenwood, so what do you want me to talk about when I come in? And this was her only response, was internship survival. I said, okay, here goes. So I did my internship. Before I even go anywhere about my internship, I want you to know that I'm an extremely blessed individual.
It's not bragging, it's not boasting. I had so many opportunities to learn so many different things. My location was perfect. The timing was perfect. The weather was even more perfect. I did my internship, State Hospital South, down in Blackfoot. Yes, I drove an hour 4 times a week, one way, and 4 hours another way. So, let's see, I did 8 hours of traveling a week to get to my internship. While my husband was still doing his school here in Rexburg, I did my internship. So, with that being said, I did my internship State Hospital South at, it's a mental institution. Well, I guess it's where those who are mentally ill go to receive help from the state. They are court ordered to go there, so it's kind of a serious thing. But I decided to break down my internship in kind of areas of wellness, and hopefully this will ring a bell, maybe, maybe not. But with that being said, we'll go to my emotional and my mental health first. While you were there, or during an internship, I was very much so of, Sister Greenwood, can you tell me what I'm doing wrong? Or can I get some feedback of what I can do better at? And I had some people who were, oh, everything is fine, everything's great. And others were, Jackie, you stink at this, you need to get better at it. And I said, okay, sounds good. And one thing I wish I had done better in my internship, because you have, for my internship, I had a class that I would teach, actually, the areas of health. And I would have probably 5 to 12 individuals, and I had to report what they did. And I noticed that none of the other, they didn't have a little notebook. They just had it all up in their mind. And so in my mind, I thought, well, if they don't have a notebook, then I guess they magically remember everything. That's not the case. Unfortunately, it was one of those difficult learning opportunities when they said, Jackie, your notes right here, they need to be improved. You're halfway through your internship, you need to do better. And let it be known, she was not my internship supervisor. And that was very hard words to receive, especially because she was not my internship supervisor. So from then on, I carried around a little notebook. I would initial the client's first and last name, write something that they did, where they improved, that they said something. So that's why I said take notes. Carry that little notebook around, put it in your back pocket. For the social area, I was blessed. Kiana Marble is an amazing individual. If you ever get the opportunity to speak with her, she will knock your socks off. I say she's probably one of the best TR students at the program, but I'm biased. She had received her job there. Her first day on her job was actually the day she was taking the NCQRC. She did pass. And she was probably my biggest life support, because I couldn't go home and talk about, well, this client did this certain thing and this is their criminal background. I couldn't go home and talk about that. That's breaking HIPAA rules. And so I could talk to her. She was in the same office as me. Since I did have an hour drive every day, or 2-hour drive every day, I tried to talk to my mom. I tried to talk to my family and say, hey, this is what things are happening in my life. How are you doing? They were my lifeline. And most importantly, my dear sweet husband, he's that cute there. So he was the biggest support of all. My next one, I did not do so well in this area, but I would suggest focusing on healthy food, exercising for yourself. Yes, I would walk back and forth between the campus. When you have the opportunity to go up there for a class, I hope, you will notice that the buildings are spread apart. So yes, I would walk back and forth, but that wasn't exercise for me. I wasn't going out and being active. I did drink lots of water though, which was good, and get as much sleep as you can. This is my little, actually it's my husband's car. His name is Rex. He had a facelift about 2 years ago when we first got married, and that's the car we actually drove back and forth, but we did get it fixed, so it doesn't look like this anymore. Anyways, for the environmental area, I struggled greatly. The only areas that I can control for my environment was my home, my office space, my car, but I could not control what was happening at work. I could not control that someone was trying to kill themselves. I could not control that the person was talking to an inanimate object. I could not control that. That was actually really funny, not scary. But I tried to keep my car clean. I tried very, very hard to keep my office space clean. Home was just impossible. We're not even going to go there. But my office space, I noticed if I ever started getting papers stacked on my desk, then it was all over. And my life was crumbling apart, so I had to clean up my office space, and magically things got better. So for environmental, that's what I did to survive. Yet again, I was blessed. My husband and I were very, very blessed in this situation. So I finished up my schooling in July. I was off track in the fall, and then I started up again in January. So with that being said, I had the fall, that 7-week break, and the fall semester to work, earn, and save money. My husband was doing his internship at the time. We barely got paid, but at least we got paid. And so for me and my situation, it was good that we worked and saved up what little money we had. May I suggest the internship scholarship? I think Sister Greenwood might have talked about that earlier. It's not a heck of a lot of money, but it helps. Every little bit helps. And I feel this is probably the most important part. I'm going to share a little story with you. I was probably halfway through my internship, and I remember I was back behind the desk, and on left and right side of me, there's a hallway, and that's where the clients would live while they're at state hospital. And I noticed there was a lot of hustling, bustling. A nurse came up and grabbed somebody else, and then grabbed another nurse, and grabbed someone else, and I'm thinking, what's going on? I later found out someone was trying to commit suicide in their room. And it was that moment that was so hard for me, because I could not imagine someone taking their life. My life is wonderful, my life is happy, but these people at state hospital staff, some of them are not so happy. And I did not ask for a priesthood blessing before my internship, but I definitely went home and I asked for a priesthood blessing. I needed the powers of heaven to protect me while I was there. It was not an easy thing, but it was not a hard thing. I knew Heavenly Father cared about me, and He cared about my soul, and He wanted me to be healthy and safe. And so these are the ways that I protected myself. I put on that armor. Because I had that hour and 2 hours every day, I listened to conference talks. Every morning, as best as we could, my husband and I would rush to get together, and we would read our scriptures. It's only 10 verses, but at least we read our scriptures that day. And then when things got very hard for me, and this happened more than once, I was grateful for this. I had an office to myself. I shared it with Kiana. But I got down and I knelt and I asked my Father in heaven for help, because it was so hard for me to be an internship and do a job that wasn't actually my job, because I was expected to do stuff I didn't know how to do. And so I knelt in prayer and I asked for help. And that was probably my biggest thing that helped me the most during my internship. That is my last day at the internship. This is one of the old buildings right here. That's where I did my internship project, which was cool. But it's more of a gym. They don't use the top 2 stories anymore. They just use the bottom 2. And that's where they did yoga. And they had a gym where they could play various games. Yay. Okay. Any questions?
What was your internship project? Can you talk about it?
In my internship, what?
What was your internship project?
Yes, my internship project was, first of all, I went and I asked my supervisor, what would you like done? Because I felt, oh, I could totally tweak this area. But that's not exactly the best approach to go. So what I did is that they said, I want the gym to be more accessible. They used to have, I guess, actors and actresses, and they used to get together and kind of be up on the stage, you know, church, like one of those old church houses. And so what they wanted to do, they wanted to put kind of a physical activity location for the clients, for the patients. And so we put up a huge net. So imagine like one of those soccer nets that went from the very top of the stage to the bottom. So they were protected and they couldn't try to hurt themselves. And then we got just exercise equipment, the exercise ball. And I put up posters around there saying, here's some activities that you can do. And
basically created a gym.
Created a little mini gym up on the stage. Yeah.
That's awesome. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, let's give her a hand. It's fun to see students come back and see them successful. Makes you happy. Okay, so we're going to move on from here. We talked about this. Here are the deadlines for when you apply for the internships. You can find this on NCTRC. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Preparing for the exam. I think this has been really well covered. The one thing that I would tell you is I find that the exam is not something you want to cram for. Okay, so while you're going to school, do the coursework and do it to the best of your ability. If it means that you go a little slower because you need to take less classes so that you can focus more time on things, do that. But the design of the exam is not for you to be able to cram and pass it. The design of the exam is to make sure that long term you did the work and you retained the information so that you're not going to harm any clients, okay? So just, if that would be my advice. Brother Bernie, do you have any advice on it?
Nope, because I haven't taken it yet. I'll be on that schedule in the spring.
Yep. Okay, so websites that you can visit to get more information, there's a bunch of different websites. And then I think that covers most, oh, I know. There was one other thing that you guys had said you wanted covered, and that would be, we have the extra time, thank you. We have the extra time, so I'm gonna hit it. So when you design, Raymond Zabersky, he's a professor out at BYU. He's done some research on resume writing, and his findings about resume writing and the field of recreation management are very interesting. In that, what are you normally told that you do with a resume?
1 page.
1 page, right? His research actually found differently because we as recreation professionals are people. We want to find out about who you are, what you do, what you like, what you don't like, all those kind of things, okay? And so it is okay as an undergrad to actually have a 2-page resume. In fact, it's probably encouraged, all right? You also want to go pretty in depth as to population. So notice on here, like this second bullet, populations included children and adults with spinal cord injury, autism, mental retardation, traumatic brain injury, and stroke survivors. So you don't want to say worked with people with disabilities. You want to say how old they were, and you want to say what kinds of disabilities. Why is that important, do you think, in our field? Go ahead.
There's such a wide variety of different disabilities you can work with that it doesn't really tell you much. You just say work with disabilities.
Yeah, and not just that, but also now we're looking at age too. So did you work with kids or did you work with adults? Do you have experience with all of them? Did you work with geriatric population? You know, those things all matter. And this could make or break you getting a job by having that kind of detail in there. Yeah.
It makes me think of kind of like the assessment process, like we need to create the best questions, but we need to create the best answers for all the questions we think that they may ask us, so that they already have like an assessment basically that tells them who we are.
Yeah, give them as much information as possible. The other thing that I want to show you is, oh, notice how this says professional experience. You can put volunteer work in there. Volunteer work is considered professional experience, and a lot of you at this stage in your life are doing volunteer work. And so it may not be a job, but it's volunteer work, but it's considered professional experience. So put it in there, okay? I have my mission on there. If you ever want some good wording, shoot me an email and I'll send it to you. I had a guy pull me aside and said he'd never seen anyone word it as well. Not to brag, because I'm not, but it just, you can really put a lot of information into how you say things. The other thing that I am a big one on is make sure you put your certifications and specialized trainings. Those are important. Professional organizations. What does it tell people when you can say that you're a member of a professional organization? That you're actively involved with the field. That means a lot to people, okay? And then the other thing that I always tell people, have interests and hobbies on there. Why would you want interests and hobbies on there? Yeah.
Those can be a lot of modalities that you use, or a lot of other things you can connect with.
Yeah, this is a big deal, because if they're looking for somebody who has a karate background and you're a black belt, and they go, wait, you could teach our Tai Chi class. That's great. That's something that's important, okay? Or maybe you have an aquatics background and they have a need for somebody who can help with aquatics therapy, or they want to train someone in. That's great. And so you definitely want to pursue interests, you want to pursue hobbies, and you want to put them on your resume, okay? In this field, it is good to take an array of classes that will build your talents, because you want to have those talents for being able to utilize them in recreational therapy. Any questions about resume stuff? Oh, references, you want to actually put those on a separate page, just a heads up. Yeah.
Good question. Even if you want to like expand your talents, there's a lot of like, I've tried to get into some of like the fine arts classes or things like that because I'm interested in like art therapy and whatnot. And they say you are not allowed to take this class unless you are registered as this is your minor or this is your major. So like, how are you supposed to take even just like the basic courses if they won't let you even go in?
You would have to go directly to the department head and explain why you're asking for a waiver. So, yeah. A lot of it comes down to there's only so much space in classes, and so who's going to get it before you? And that's why you have to plead your case.
And we know in recreation, the Brother Wood and Brother Kugat want someone from another major in their group. So if someone asks them, could I get in? And they would want them in the group, and it's probably going to be the same there too. They're not going to try to shut you out. They're going to try to get you in.
Yeah, if they have the space, more often than not, they're going to say yes. It's just you often have to do a special waiver for them to do that. Other questions? Does this help with resume information? Yeah. Yeah, this is actually on BYU-I's website. If you Google BYU-I Therapeutic Recreation Resume, it pops up. They have examples of all sorts of different fields of resumes. Yeah.
The resume people on campus.
They show you your different parts.
Yeah. So and that's how they're trained, because they're trained with the whole, it goes to one page, but they specifically came to me and asked me about our field. And so based on Zabrisky's research and different experiences on my end as far as resume writing, this is what I let them know. So yeah.
So off this topic.
Okay.
Professional liability insurance.
Oh, good.
A lot of internships require it.
Okay, so professional liability insurance, very interesting. Oftentimes you're, like Colorado has a law that you have to have liability insurance. Now here's what's interesting, is that Idaho has a law that prohibits the university from getting you professional liability insurance, okay? And so it's two conflicting laws. However, in the Colorado statute, it's written that there can be exceptions to that based on the fact that you're coming from a state that doesn't allow the university to give you liability insurance. Does that make sense? Now, you can apply for individual professional liability insurance. Generally, you can get a less expensive rate through ATRA, the American Therapeutic Recreation Association, but you can also just contact an insurance broker and say, I'm looking for professional liability insurance. Okay, so it's not a bad idea to have it, for sure. But most agencies, it's weird because Colorado is kind of an exception, and then there's one other one, I think it's Georgia, but I've only had 2 different states where I've encountered it, or 2 different agencies where I've encountered it. Almost all the other ones, they were covered under the other agency's insurance. So does that answer your question, Sean?
So what if the state doesn't have that kind of a statute? Do you have to go get?
Usually I would, if you know that you don't have any sort of liability insurance at all, and if you know that the internship office or the internship site that you're going to does not offer any sort of insurance coverage, I would get professional liability insurance. I got it when I graduated. When I was, fresh out of school, I purchased it, and it wasn't very expensive. I remember it being pretty inexpensive. Other questions? Yes.
So what about red flags for kids?
Okay, red flags. If you say to them, give me an example of, a treatment plan that you're utilizing, and they say to you, oh, we don't do any sort of goals or anything, that's a big red flag. Because it means that they're probably not using the TR process, and you really need to have that. The best thing that I can tell you is go on to nctrc.org's website and download the actual application to apply to become a recreation therapist. There's a checklist on that packet, and that the checklist goes through everything that you have to be able to say you experienced at that internship. I would look at that before you interview with places, and then I would base your questions that you ask them around that. And I would look for answers to those questions as they talk. Does that make sense? Because what you want to make sure is that you're able to say yes to all those things that you've been exposed to them. Yes, Kate.
Just a quick question. So like, say for example, you are receiving leadership training, like all that stuff. Is it better to have that just in general, or is it better, like for example, I'm in outdoor activities, and I'm working as a volunteer, manager, and now coordinator, and I just applied to be a director and had an interview, and I find out if I get it on Thursday. Is it smarter for me to drop the director position and to then instead be doing stuff with like TRS Society, because I don't have time for TRS Society when I do outdoor activities.
I think that's a personal decision. It goes back down. I would, if you were applying for a job with me, okay, and I saw that you were a director and had a director position, I would look highly on that. Okay, that would tell me that you had been involved in higher levels of leadership, and that you had worked hard to get to that point. So I wouldn't see that as a strike against you by any means.